Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is the final part of the 2022 Project Orchids. So this is Orchid number 9 in the final look, and it will be the last in the set apart from one. I will do a summing up in a separate video, probably tomorrow or the next day, and in there I will say about my ideas for the Project Orchids for next year, and you yourselves could possibly have a think about what you might want to see, and if it doesn't coincide with what I've got in mind, then you can make your suggestions in the comments and we'll come up with some sort of project for next year. Because although it's not my most popular video, there are a good number of people who like to see the Project Orchids in some shape or form. So we'll come up with something for next year. And as far as the Project Orchids for this year is concerned, let's get on with the last one. Now the Oncidium chrysomorphum, last time we looked at it we had a new growth pushing on and not much of a root system at all. And from past experience I said that the new growth will produce a new set of roots, and that seems to be what this plant does. It's quite happy to dump its previous root system and then grow a new one quite dramatically. You know, a lot of Oncidiums might lose some older roots, especially at a repot time, but not to the extent that this one does. So this one's a little bit unusual from that point of view. Now the new growth we were looking at last time has pushed on quite nicely. It's starting to form its bulb, and guess what? It's starting to produce a new root system, as expected. But what has also happened is down in here, if I can get the leaf to open up, we have what I hope is another new growth and not a flower spike. I'm pretty certain that is another new growth. So I will get at this next time I water it. You know, I check my plants over when I water, not doing it now on film. But this leaf will need to be cut back so that that new growth, when it produces its roots, the roots go down in the pot, yeah, rather than climbing up the leaf like they do if the leaf stays there. So we've got one continuing to progress and a new one starting on what is quite an old bulb, although it's, you know, it's not old enough to have lost its leaves yet. So this plant as an Oncidium grows differently to many that I've got, and as a consequence I have to deal with it separately. It's a massive drinker. I got a job to keep up with this one. Now next time I repot this, it's going to go in a moisture retentive media because it drinks. And at the moment that plant's dry. It only got watered a couple of days ago, and it's actually got cocoa husk in the mix. So it's just drinking at the moment, even though it hasn't fully established the new root system yet. So if I'm going to push these new growths on, I need to keep up with it. So this one might have to get watered. All I need to do really is, like when I do the mounts, remember to do this one as well. That ups the frequency quite dramatically, and as those roots progress it'll start drinking even more. So that's that one. We missed the blooming. We had a mass of buds last time on spikes. We missed those. That happens. They don't last too long. There's a load of them, but they're tiny and they don't last long. So as a species, that's often the case. So we'll see what this one looks like next time. All we will probably get is the growths are progressing and heading towards maturity with a better root system. So that's what's expected. The last one in this group is the Oncidium chrysomorphum. This one, so far since I've had it, seems to have a strange habit, because after bulbs mature and after flowering it seems to just sort of die back as far as the roots are concerned, and then as new growths push on it grows a new set, so it seems to want to replace its roots frequently. So last time we looked at it, we had a new growth pushing on. That was this one. That's maturing. It's got its bulb now. I don't see any sign of a spike yet, but it's highly likely to bloom on that one. And now what we've got is another new growth coming over here. And again, that one is highly likely to bloom. But we still haven't got a massive outbreak of roots, but we have got some. So there's a lot more active roots in there than there was last time round. So it's coming on. I can't remember what time of year this one bloomed last time, but it does tend to bloom on virtually every growth it produces. It's done that so far, so I am expecting this bulb to bloom. It just hasn't started to spike yet, but it's still maturing. It hasn't fully matured, that bulb yet. And I think this one has actually bloomed, I think. Has it? Can't remember now. Did this one bloom? Yes, that one did bloom. So yes, so we're looking for this one to bloom, followed by that one quite a bit on further on. So that would be the hope for that, would be to see some blooms again. Massive spikes, branch spikes with many blooms, but they're tiny. They are fragrant as well. So hopefully we'll see those in the not too distant future, but the spikes take a long time to grow, so even if there was a spike showing on this, we'd be a long way off seeing the blooms. So that's the last one in group 3 and the last one in update 2. So now we look forward to update 3 in September time. Now this one hasn't actually done much since we last saw it. There's a little bit going on that's not necessarily obvious, but the new growth hasn't pushed on that well, but this growth over here, the one that hasn't actually bloomed, has actually increased in size and matured quite nicely. So that bulb is now blooming size and may well do so. We've got the root system back again, so that's good, but the new growth hasn't progressed as well as I would have expected for the time of year. Anyway, it's doing okay. You know, as a species, they're not going to be as vigorous as some of the hybrids. So, you know, that's just the way it is. And all I can expect from this is some blooms at some time. Hopefully from this bulb. Now it's matured. Now that was a little unexpected because the bulb carried on swelling after I thought it had finished. So it's actually now a good sized bulb. So it's plenty big enough to bloom, and all I can hope is that the new growth pushes on to full size, because it almost looks as though it's stalled, quite honestly. So we'll see how that one goes. Now that's the last one in the group and the last one in update 3. So here we go then, the final clip of the final orchid in the final look. There's a job for you. In this entire video, count up how many times I used the word final. Well, it is a bit final, isn't it? And there's another one. Right, this plant, although it's an Oncidium and it's a true Oncidium species, doesn't grow like quite a few of my others. New growth seem to come up in odd places. New growth here at the moment. One of its leaves failed, but nonetheless it's still pushing on, and it grows its roots at an odd time. It's a strange plant, but it still blooms regular, and you know, when it blooms, it's a mass of blooms basically. So it does quite well. But it finishes up the year with mature growths that have bloomed and a new growth growing, just about. It's got roots. It's a strange thing. It seems to lose a lot of its roots almost every year and grow a new set. Again, that's unusual for an Oncidium. They can lose older roots as time goes on, but I haven't come across one like this that does it almost regular, almost an annual event. And that's without disturbing it to repot it. Anyway, it's made it through the year, it's still growing, and I'm sure that growth will push on very slowly through the winter and hopefully will mature and we should get some more blooms next year. As I said, I'd like to keep this one going, even though the blooms aren't spectacular, because it was a gift. And it's a gift from somebody I may never see again, because it came from Zaina, and she's moved to northern Italy. So, you know, her visits to the country are very thin on the ground, I would imagine. But probably snowed in at the moment, come to think of it. Anyway, so that's the end of the Project Orchids for this year, and the final plant. So there we go then, the final orchid of the final look of the 2022 Project Orchids. I hope you've enjoyed the format that I did for this year, the idea of keeping the video clips and then pulling them together at the end. Quite honestly, compared with how I've done it before, this has been so much easier. So you can imagine that next year is going to be along the same lines, if not quite the same. But as I said, apologising for losing a clip in this particular set. I forgot to say at the beginning, I must admit. But yes, the initial look video went missing. But given that there were 9 orchids and 4 sets, losing one clip is not bad going, I don't think. Anyway, sorry about that, but that life happens and all that sort of stuff. I can't think, I've obviously slid it and dropped it in a folder and missed. It's gone somewhere where it shouldn't have gone. You know, searched the whole place, I didn't find it. So yeah, I think the Project Orchids went okay this year, and the idea of keeping the video clips, although it takes up an enormous amount of space by the end of the year, my separate drive on the laptop has oodles of space on it. That's the normal sort of whizzing round sort of drive. The solid state disk within the laptop doesn't have the sort of space that would be required to store lots of video clips, so I have to keep that one very tidy. That's the one where the software lives, so we have to keep that tidy anyway. Yeah, so we'll do something along the lines next year, but this was putting these final sets together. The final look has been very easy for me to do. You know, I mean, technically speaking, it was a matter of going back to the folders for the initial look, the update 1, update 2, update 3, group 1, group 2, group 3, and just going in there, finding the appropriate clip, bringing it into the software editor, putting the name against it, and an idea from somebody's suggestion, the idea of putting the date along the bottom for the continuous part of the video clip for that particular month. That was a viewer's idea, it wasn't mine, but it works. You know, it reminds you where you are during the video clip. Yeah, very easy to put together. And then just an introduction, an ending, like this bit, and obviously film the plant. So we'll be doing something similar next year, yet to be decided. I suspect the format is going to be very, very similar, with a few ideas that I've picked up along the way from the beginning rather than part way through. But we'll have a think about how we do the orchids. Groups of 3, maybe, that's a bit much. Some suggested groups of 1. Anyway, we'll have a chat about it, and then you can say what you think and what you think might be a good idea. And if nobody's thought of anything that you've thought of, then get it in the comments on tomorrow's or the next day's video, and we'll come up with something, make a decision and all that stuff. No rush. No rush, he says, halfway through December. Next year starts in a few weeks' time, doesn't it? Time flies. Anyway, for those of you who've watched the Project Orchids, I hope you've enjoyed them, and see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.